You see the percentage loading, and then it will say live now, so you can start speaking then.
All right. Uh, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from whichever part of the world where you are listening to. You are welcome to this session of the YALI 10 anniversary. And this session is specifically on fundraising for civic engagement, theory meets practice. My name is Dr. Nicholas Ozo. I'll be your moderator, and I am the Executive Director of African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS. ATPS is a transdisciplinary network of researchers, policymakers, civil society actors, and the private sector actors that promote the generation, dissemination, use, and mastery of science, technology, and innovation for Africa's development. I'm happy to welcome all of you, especially our speakers, to this particular event. And without wasting time, I would want to introduce our speakers for the day. We have Mr. Pap, Pap Sam. Pap is the Executive Director of Ashoka Africa and the Vice President of Ashoka Global. We also have Mr. Gary Officer, who is the President and CEO of the Center for Workforce Inclusion. And also we have our own dear Colisil Twala. I hope I pronounced that well. Who wears so many hats, and is the 2016 Mandela Washington Fellow, chairperson of the U.S. Exchange Program, Alumni Association of Eswatini, and so on and so forth. The bios of our speakers, our honorable speakers, are in this platform, and I would encourage you to take a tour to see these bios and read about them so that you can know more about them and probably contact them afterwards. So before we start, I would like to set out some ground rules relating to how we will make our presentations. Once I finish introducing the goal of the session, I will invite the first speaker in the order that I had made to speak. Every speaker will speak for 6 minutes, after which to speak on specific areas which they have been pre-assigned for under this topic, fundraising for civic engagement. And thereafter, we will open the session for questions and answers segment, which will take us about 30 minutes. And thereafter, we will give the speakers another round of 1 minute each to wrap up, and maybe the moderator can finalize in another 1 or 2 minutes. So that will be the format for our presentation. So what is the goal for this session? Like I said, the topic is fundraising, and is a very important when we talk about funds, whether it is for our work or personal or official use. You will know that it is a critical aspect of our life, because money is the real thing. So fundraising for civic engagement, theory meets practice, The session will focus on sharing strategies and best practices in fundraising for civic engagement organizations. The session will cover the challenges and opportunities related to fundraising and offer concrete recommendations on developing and implementing successful fundraising strategies for civic engagement organizations at all levels, be it local, national, or international. So at this stage, without much ado, I do not want to preempt. I do not want to um, steal the show. I would want the speakers to really vibrate and show us what they have by letting us know aspects of these issues that I have um, spoken about regarding fundraising for civic engagement. And I would first of all want to invite our own Mr. Sam to lead the stage, Pape Sam, to lead the stage by making his 6 minutes presentation, and your time starts now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to the organizer, thanks to my fellow panelists, thanks to the participants, and also joining the celebration of the 10th anniversary of YALI. Today, I think I have the honor of being part of this panel, which is also talking about fundraising for civic engagement, theory meets practice. And I think fundraising is really an activity for every organization, either private, public, or social entrepreneurs. They're all looking to raise money. As a social entrepreneur myself, I have experienced many years of challenges of trying to figure out how do you find money. I think we all agree that finding money is a problem, but there is also another aspect to it, meaning the conversation today. We are asking us to focus on the African context, which is how do we leverage and find money for civic engagement within the African context. I'll just start with giving a few data, because I'm also involved in other projects which call Impact Africa. So we are really trying to overcome what we call the racial bias when it comes to philanthropic funding in Africa. And we recently learned that 74% of funding that are going to Africa for Africans are actually going to international NGOs. So which means that NGOs led by international organizations, and only 14 goes to African-led organizations. So that's just wanted to share with you that data, just to say how difficult is it, because there is the context of raising money, but also there is a bias within the whole ecosystem of finding money in Africa. Another challenge also I want to share, because we are asked to share challenges and also opportunities. I'm starting with the challenges, is that philanthropy is not really well developed or well understood in Africa. You see in the Western world, you see wealthy people, business people will invest $1 billion, $1 million in a sector they want to develop in 10, 15 years, meaning they want to create system change in 10, 15 years. For example, how do I change education without war? How do I eradicate, or how do I anticipate a pandemic in 10 years, in 20 years? We don't have enough wealth Africans who are investing in that. And that's why the lack of philanthropy is also another problem in Africa. And third, we are dealing with government and private sectors in Africa, where government's biggest challenge is youth employment, where young people also cannot afford not to work. And I'll explain that, which is like, if they stay a day or 2 days saying that I'm going to invest on something that will not bring me money for maybe 5 years, there is a problem of putting food on the table. How do they feed their parents? So that becomes also another challenge. So I can go on and listing the challenge. I know I was only asked to list 2 of those challenges, but I just wanted to provide a bigger context. Now let me move on maybe to the opportunities of how do you fundraise. I think we have what we call in Africa the communal culture. We have extended family. I think for me, the first thing that I would suggest for any entrepreneurs is reach out to your extended immediate family, because we care about each other, we support each other. We have what we say the neighborhood, we have the community. Before, if anything happened to you within your neighborhood, your neighbors will come to you. I live in the US for 17 years. I know the difference between having a community here in Africa and outside. So the first thing, rely on your own people, because it does two things. First, if they believe in you, they will give you motivation, they will give you hope, they will give you support. If they believe in you, your own family, that's one. Second, if you believe in you, they will give you the money to do that, to support. A second opportunity I will say is that sometimes we make the difference, we make the mistake of combining or confusing association and businesses. There are a lot of associations, especially if you go to Francophone Africa, there is a law that really allows them to create association, and these associations should not generate revenue for themselves. So we have a lot of youth who are investing in entrepreneurs, but actually going into association, which is not necessary because the legal framework doesn't exist to understand social entrepreneurs in Francophone Africa, but also in most Anglophone African countries. They do exist in somewhere where you can recognize the right and give the social entrepreneurs a framework where the social entrepreneurs is addressing a community problem, is creating impact for the local community, but at the same time, they're generating revenue. Where do you put them? Government will put them sometime in businesses where they will have to pay taxes, where they don't have any privilege or they don't have any opportunity or any support to really create and address problems on within the civic sector, which I call the citizenship sector, which is young people right now. If you look at the recent generation of African MBA graduates, they don't care only about the business aspect. They want to be involved in the politics. They want to create their communities. They want to support their communities. So the business aspect is not only what they care about, but also they care about community. So there is a legal framework, I think, that needs also be added. But focusing on the fundraising, I will just maybe finish up because I'm about to run out of time. Go first to your family, your immediate family. Second, look at for family foundations. Look at for corporate social responsibility, because I will say another word, but there is I will call mostly what I call the impact supporters, not the impact investors, but the impact supporters. Get into also a local foundation, but this is a sector where fundraising is really difficult within Africa. So if I have one suggestion to leave with the young people, the YALI members, the African youth who are within the network, is you have to fight for creating the legal framework for those young entrepreneurs who are not necessarily doing business, they're not necessarily doing social impact, but they're doing civic engagement, which is what I call social entrepreneur. There is a legal framework for that. Second is create also the philanthropy, engage the wealth Africans, the business leaders to really create impact for our communities. And third, educate what I call the racial bias when it comes to philanthropy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, merci beaucoup, Monsieur, for that very explicit presentation. I would not try to summarize here, but immediately invite Gary, officer, to make his own presentation in 6 minutes. Gary, please. You are muted. You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to, first of all, do a couple of things that may hopefully bring some attention to this very important issue. I want to, first of all, acknowledge Bob Dodek, who is the Assistant Secretary for Africa at the State Department. I want to recognize my great friend and colleague, Dr. Mondi Mwangwa, at the Wilson Center for her work in bringing to attention the needs of the continent to the United States and around the world. But also I want to recognize, for the purpose of this conversation, I want to recognize Dr. Donald Gibbs, former US ambassador to South Africa, now president, CEO of the Skull Foundation, and someone who has really committed his work and now his philanthropy on all things Africa and its development. And I also want to recognize Mr. Darren Walker, president and CEO of the Ford Foundation in New York City. Why am I mentioning these people? Each of them have a unique platform. Each of them can bring to light the issues we are talking about today. And each of them have the bully pulpit to drive funding and resources your way. So I want to at least thank those persons who I mentioned, because they play a leading role in bringing to life the conversation we are about to begin. So I bring a unique perspective in that I have been a funder on 2 occasions, and I've also been a grant seeker. What have I learned as a philanthropist that informed my strategies as someone seeking opportunity for funding? Here are my lessons. The first is every grant seeker who approaches a funder will approach someone who has heard it all before. They will have heard all the programming and needs statement that you will bring to their attention. And they will decide, based on how you have presented your case, whether or not you merit what I call, and this is the first lesson, they will give you what I call go-away money. I like the idea, you guys are great, but here's $15,000, whatever it is, and go away for next year, right? Or you will say something. You will leave an impression on someone where their ear will perk up. You've projected something they have not heard before. So as a grant seeker, what I try to do, informed by that experience, is to offer my audience something they haven't heard before. And how I do that is, first of all, 1, I will conduct, this applies wherever you are, whether it's Lusaka, Joburg, Accra, Nairobi, it's all the same. 1, you have to communicate that you have conducted a forensic understanding of the needs of your community in all of its complexities. And 2, you will then build your funding strategies around that critical set of unmet needs that you have scoped out that nobody else is working to fix. That's my first. The second, and this is another important statement here, know your competitors. Know your competitors. Develop a unique understanding of what they are doing and build your funding case around why your approach addresses the key deficiencies or gaps that you have identified through your analysis. 3, and this is a trick I've always used, by the way, so this one's a good one. Do not disparage your competitors. Praise them as agents of change and agents of good in your community. Recognize their value, acknowledge their leadership. By doing that, you are showing grace and humility. But also by doing that, you are also co-opting the audience to embrace you and your humanity. And once you've done all those things, great leader, great organization, great mission, great impact, this is why I'm here today. I'm here because whether it's housing, microfinance, maternal child health, whatever the issues are, my approach is the most unique. My approach gets to the most people. My approach will enable us to engage in a scalable programming response that none of my competitors are currently capable of doing. You co-opt your audience, you praise them, and then you offer your unique value proposition. 3, understand your value. I give you a US example here, right? And I think Papa said this very well. In the city of Baltimore here, there's $7 billion in philanthropic wealth from the foundation community. Less than 5% of those funds flow into the Black community. So whether it's Nairobi, Joburg, Accra, and Lusaka, the issues around support for African-led organizations is a global problem. And there are intrinsic biases attached to whether or not folks will feel that we are worthy or skilled to deliver programming at the scale that we need. But you have to understand your value and do not accept go-away money. 5, track philanthropic trends consistently. See where those subtle trends are away from, and we've seen them today, by the way. And there's a trend that's ongoing now away from pure focusing around evidence-based grant making to grant making that recognizes the interest in democratizing decision making or engaging stakeholder participation on boards. Yes. And finally, I think the issue of scale is important. The issue of fundraising is important. The issue of keeping the founder engaged is critical. So the Skull Foundation only funds organizations really where the founder is still involved in the organization, right? Good. Some organizations are looking for, funders are looking for people that bring in participants or clients as part of how decisions are made. So follow the trends that exist in the grant making world, see who's doing what, and adapt your strategies, adapt your programming, and adapt your decision making around those trends. And that concludes 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gary. I wish we had more time so that we continue to listen to that very insightful conversation or presentation from you. But then we have to move on. The last speaker, but not the least at all, is Ms. Tuala, who is going to, I'm sure, garnish or ice the cake based on the presentations that both Gary and Pape had done. So I welcome Ms. Tuala to make her 6 minutes presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Nicola. To my fellow speakers, Mr. Pape and Mr. Gary. My name is Tony Pilatala, as the doctor has mentioned, and my submissions will be based on as a board member of an NGO, as an executive of an international NGO in Eswatini, and as a YALI alumna who's currently working on formalizing a foundation that I started in 2016. So the key elements or components that one should focus on when they're trying to secure or sustain funding for a civic engagement or for an NGO. I'll make an example. In the international NGO that I work for, I and my colleagues from Zambia and Zimbabwe recently applied for a £4 million grant for 3 years, which we failed to get. So in the feedback that to us, it was highlighted that we should be more specific when addressing the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the Mr. Officer actually highlighted. So we needed to be thorough when breaking down everything and provide evidence. We had made a mistake of thinking that just because it was at the stage, we did not have to thoroughly break down everything and to be specific at the country level for each country, which was Eswatini, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. But But what we didn't understand is that this is a competition, like Mr. Officer has. So even there, at that concept not writing stage, we didn't have to wait until we go through to the stage. We had to ensure that everything was very specific and very thorough in what we had written. I know, though, in trying to do this in Africa, actually, as an organization, one needs to apply for more funding whilst you're still delivering on other projects in the organization, or whilst you're still writing reports for other projects. So there isn't really enough time to thoroughly break down everything, especially at the concept application stage. The other challenge is that a lot of African countries do not have readily available and easily accessible data on the statistics on the ground, such as the number of people maybe living with disabilities who are below the poverty line and who are unemployed. And funders do not always understand this, that most of these statistics are not readily available. And and as an organization, you might find that you haven't really done the proper research because maybe you don't have the funding for that. And you're hoping that once you get the funding, you can then do the baseline and do all this and that. So you might be relying on some statistics here and there, but you might not have the so which normally is a disadvantage. Okay, another feedback that we got was that we needed to demonstrate that we could do more with less money, the value for money. This meant that the bulk of the budget needed to be allocated to directly benefit the beneficiaries and less of it costs. The truth is that most funders are not comfortable paying substantial staff or administration costs, whilst every organization is now. This becomes a challenge for an result, as it is hard to attract properly qualified personnel if you're not paying what other industries are offering. So this is why an NGO needs to have a diverse fundraising strategy, have investments to fund its personnel and other administrative costs, and not just rely on one strategy or just getting money for donors. And if possible, an NGO can just have someone or a small team dedicated to fundraising and ensuring sustainable funding, so that people are not being drawn from writing reports or delivering on other projects to do proposals at the same time. To sustain funding, an organization should have prudent financial management. This means that the staff and the board of directors must ensure that more is delivered with less money. This can be done through forming partnerships with other organizations, soliciting donations in kind where it's possible, that there's no wastage whilst they build cash reserves and invest their savings in maybe an endowment fund. Where possible, the organization should negotiate with their donors to invest money they manage to save once they've delivered on their project. So the difference maker, really, it is critical. And I like that most of this, Mr. Gary has actually really mentioned, but it is really critical to be thorough and specific when you are concentrating on the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and demonstrate value for money. It is also critical to always have sustainability, choosing the fundraising strategy or donors or funders to approach for funding. The challenge is that funding is scarce, as it has been mentioned by my colleagues who have presented before me. So in our desperate need for finance, most organizations end up following the money and telling funders what they need to hear, even if they know it's impractical. My suggestion is never to. So the challenges that African organizations are faced when raising money, just to add on what my colleagues have already mentioned, is the lack of the financial prudence from some NGOs. This is evidenced by a lot of strategy that is diverse. You find that most NGOs are depending on donor funding. Whilst a diversified strategy that ensures that the organization will have enough funding on the short term, medium term, and long term is absolutely necessary. And to overcome this challenge of lack of financial prudence, the NGOs or the civic organization can attend fundraising classes or fundraising conferences. With COVID-19, some of these are now provided online and others are even free. So it makes to get that kind of knowledge. So another challenge is that a lot of funders are inflexible and do not really view the organizations they fund as in development. In my experience, the organization seeking funding is normally at the beginning end, where the funder assumes to know everything and the organization has to jump through hoops to get and return the funds. For example, funders will say that they want you to deliver a 3-year project and ensure sustainability. For those of us who've been on the ground for more than 10 years, we will tell you that sustainability is hard on a project that is only 3 years. Why? Because one of Africa's main and behaviors rooted in culture and socialization. To change those mindsets and behaviors definitely takes more than 3 years in most cases. So to overcome this challenge, funders should give more respect to the organizations that they fund, since they're the ones on the ground, and should be open to new suggestions they haven't heard before. So I need to hurry and conclude. The 2 opportunities: 1, internet. Its popularity has been increased by, and I have mentioned that training through the internet definitely helps. 2, as YALI fellows ourselves, because we seriously need more Africans funding. It hasn't mentioned that there isn't enough money coming to Africa to fund ourselves. There must be a mindset change from every ordinary African to understand that Africa is for us and needs to be developed by us. The dependency syndrome must be seriously challenged, starting with us YALI fellows. I wish we could start a fund where we fellows can contribute towards, as little as $10 a month or more for those who can afford. And those funds can be consolidated and maybe even meshed by USAID annually as our partner. That money can then be used to start an endowment fund whose interest can be used to fund our projects as YALI fellows. So in conclusion, my recommendation or piece of advice that I would give to young Africans trying to raise sustainable funding is that start where you are with what you have. Be patient and do not compromise what you believe in just because you are chasing funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Start where you are. Be patient. Take it one after another. Thank you for that closing very closing remark for your presentation, first presentation. At this point, I would open it up for discussions, and we already have some questions from the
Dr. Ozar?
participants. I'm coming, Mr. Gary, because, we are really tight on time. I know you have a burning issue, and that's why we have this next segment, which is questions and answers and conversation and discussions. So in the next 25 minutes, we will be dealing with that. And I'm sure you will have enough time to deal with the issue that is burning in your heart. So I would like to draw our attention to some of the questions that have already been posted to us. Unfortunately, we lost Pape. I don't know whether he is back because the first question talks about, and I'll read it, is from Kolisi. He says, I have noticed a trend in African societies where that extended family fabric that has held our societies together for years is disintegrating, and we are moving towards the Western type of family structures. We are losing our family structure. What is your take? Because it is really an opportunity, as you mentioned. Good. As you recall, Pape had suggested that one of the opportunities for fundraising for civic engagement is from immediate and extended family. But now, this concern from Kolisi is that the family unit is no longer the way it used to be in Africa. They have broken down. Some are practicing the Western type of family structure where they have to go and put their elderly, for instance, in an elderly home. This is not our practice in Africa. We live with them and give them succor and support. So I wouldn't want to venture into that, answering it, but if Pape is not here, I would invite Gary and Tuala to attempt to address this particular question, please. So maybe, okay, Tuala, they say ladies first.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. It is true that we as a society in Africa are changing. And that said, but also as we are changing, we are becoming more globalized, which present an opportunity. If your family structure isn't as extended as it was before, you can definitely tap into friends, but also there are platforms like crowdfunding. You find crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe. They're not family. So now the whole world has become our extended family. So it is true, yes, that in Africa, in a lot of African families, it's no longer that strong. So I think if you can tap into your extended family, immediate extended family, definitely do it. If not, friends. If not, look at crowdfunding platforms. It's not just GoFundMe. I know that GoFundMe doesn't really list Africa as one of those countries where they work, but they do allow that if somebody is in the countries that are listed, they can fundraise for you. And as YALI fellows, the advantage that we have is that we were exposed to the US and we did make some connections there. So the people that you connected with that in the US or in the countries where the platform works can definitely fundraise for you. So that would be my contribution.
I think that's very useful. If we now regard the global community as that our extended family, then it means even our horizon is so wide enough to get this fund that we need. So I think you are very much in order, as well as friends, which can come to our aid. Gary, I don't know whether you have anything to add to this particular comment from Kolisi.
Sure. And before I want to add, I want to make a mention to Ambassador Mark Green, former head of USAID, who now is leading the Wilson Center. And he's someone who brings enormous interest, who's born on the continent, in Africa. He's passionate about development on the continent. So the opportunity for us today to convene and discuss the challenges and opportunities, I think, will enlighten and embolden and inspire his work at the center to bring attention to the needs of the continent. So that was my attempt at trying to interject myself, Dr. Nicholas Ozar. But let's take philanthropy through its different iterations, right? Mm-hmm. There's basically three kinds of philanthropy, right? There's individual giving, and I mentioned family members and friends. Individual giving is the most robust form of philanthropy on the planet, right? We give to our churches, we give to our family members, we pay for schools. Adopted mama, adopted grandma are also contributing to the family. So it's not just the immediate family. In the diaspora, the family is the village. And that village will take on board that gifted one and send him off to school to England or to Canada. Good. So it's so family has a very broad connotation in the context of diaspora. So you have
I will hold you there. I'll hold you there, Mr. Gary, because we would want to as well address some other questions that are coming up, so that we don't leave anyone behind. At least you have provided, we have given Kolisi some of the answers that will help him or her. From the name, I can't trace the gender. So the second question goes this way from Simbarashi. Sounds feminine. I am interested in knowing how, as YALI alumnus, we can tap into funding opportunities in light of the several requirements by funders, such as financial statements, like financial audit for previous years, when you are just a startup? How do you go around that? So, you see, just like when we went to the UK for the first time and we wanted to do some work as a PhD student, and then they will tell you, show evidence of previous work. You just came. How do you show evidence when you have not worked at all? So that is what is her concern. How do you deal with these too much preconditions for funding? And I'll start with you, Gary.
So as a funder, I've always worked on the principle, Dr. Ozar, and someone much smarter than I taught me this very early in my career, that people will only support you and fund you if they owe you or if they know you. People will fund you and support you if they owe you or know you. And I've always lived by the principle of always seeking to get around the gatekeepers. Every funder has a gatekeeper. You send your friendly emails to just go away. If you can work around the gatekeeper, engage in FaceTime with the decision maker, have an idea journey with critical feedback. That's one way of both demystifying the process, but getting the inside scoop you need to help get you there. As a funder, I've literally had to, I shouldn't say this publicly, but on more than one occasion, because I was so enamored with what I was seeing, and I knew what they wanted to do, but weren't putting it on paper, I helped my grantee write their proposals. Right? Personalize the relationship, get to know people, have them observe their passion and your purpose. Help them to visualize what you're trying to accomplish. Be honest, be transparent, and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if you can do all of those things in a face-to-face manner, you have an opportunity to address some of the deficiencies that came through in that question.
Thank you very much, Gary. I think as if you are a prophet, you also started answering another question. No wonder you wear two hats, a funder and a grantee at the same time. So you have invariably answered the next question that was coming from Maurice, who had said or asked, we have heard people say that donors fund people and not organizations. Do you believe in this statement? If you do, please elaborate what this means. I think you answered it. You used one stone to kill these two birds. And I'm very, very happy for that statement that even myself, I'll be taking home today. People fund people if they owe you or if they know you. And I
have more to add to that, by the way. So indulge me for a moment.
Okay.
The questioner was spot on. Every time I succeeded in obtaining a big win, I would sit down with the person that made the decision. And I'd ask them, why did you choose me? They would say, hence my earlier comments, that we heard something from you and we saw something in you that we did not see in the others. Now it became personal, right? But there's a weakness to that personality cult where the founder or the CEO is the one that's drawing funder interest. Because if he or she then leaves, the organization is imperiled. Our responsibility is to create an organization, create a movement that can survive without us.
Nice.
Excellent. I think, you said, you've said it all here, because if, as an executive director who has been fundraising for the last 12 years, I have also seen that when I check my portfolio of grants that I have made in the last 12 years, I can confirm that the ones I wrote through open competitive calls and able to get them will be like 20%. The other 80% align perfectly well with the dictum that Mr. Gary has propounded today, because those who know me, who trust me, who have worked with me, who have had me speak in events, who have interacted with me, who have seen my outputs and products, are more interested in giving me funds than just seeing call for proposals and throwing in. And we know this, that sometimes even this call for proposals, and I'm happy that Gary is guilty as charged, because even some of these call for proposals are already packaged for someone else.
That's
But
right.
because of the procurement process, you must have to advertise it. And no matter what anybody on earth writes, this project is for someone. And Gary, when I will charge you to court, you will come and answer. But that is the truth. That is the truth. We need to package ourselves. So we have a few minutes left, and
Sorry,
I
Doctor.
would want Twala to actually answer the question that I'm going to read out from Sedina. He says, as a consultant in business entrepreneurship and personal development through my enterprise, I would like to set a program for unwealthy young people on different domains like accelerate learning and entrepreneurship. How should I do to raise funds for this initiative instead of being a business? If you understand that at all, can you attempt to respond to him, please?
Thank you, Doc. Sorry, what I wanted to say is, before you pass that question, because there's a previous question that was asked by YALI Alarm, to say, as an alarm, when they still haven't built a product, I just wanted to come in there that, yes, I just wanted to come in there. Can you hear me, Doc?
Go ahead.
I'm still there. Yes, I just wanted to come in there that we are very lucky as YALI fellows that we have the American Embassy. USAID is actually very keen on working with us. And that's the first step, or the stepping stone. I have found that because I used to be very weary with working with USAID. I had heard that there are too many processes when you have to report. So I just I'm going to stay away from that. Too many reports processes is not for me. But I have found that as we worked with them, as we worked with the embassy and worked with USAID, as they understood us, and it was easier when we had to apply for funding. So I think that's extremely important for YALI alumni, that don't stay away from USAID. That will be your face, that will help you build your profile, actually. So then I can come to this one of saying that she's looking, I hope it's a she's looking to set up a different program, and she wants funding for it. We have said that there are different ways. The fundraising strategy should definitely be diversified. I know that normally we would think of donors of big organizations that will, but there are several ways of fundraising that you can start, that you can do. That includes Gary has spoken about individuals, where you can get individuals to actually give, where you can approach companies for corporate social responsibility funds and see if you can actually get funding from that, where you can host special events for fundraising, where you can do online appeals, when you can apply for endowment funds, you can, where you can, okay, she has said that she doesn't want to provide, I think, a service, because as a company, you can provide that service and use that money to fund that. And I've spoken about crowdfunding platforms such as GoFundMe. So there are definitely different platforms that you can use to actually tap into that funding without having to write a proposal for a big funder to fund that. I hope I've responded.
Yes, of course, you have done justice to that, and honestly, I'm sure. Unfortunately, we lost Pape, who we are informed is handling an emergency. So he would have given us also his mind. So we have more time. Maybe in the next 8 minutes, we should be rounding up. Maybe I give each of you 2 minutes now to wrap up your points, sharpen up your recommendations for African youths in this regard, especially with respect to fundraising. 2 minutes, top-notch, high-level recommendations, please. And I will go with ladies first.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. In conclusion, I've really said most of my points, but really, as fellows, it is our responsibility to ensure that the quality of lives of our people in Africa improves. To whom much is given, much is required. So because we've been given such a huge opportunity, we definitely need to do whatever we can to give back. So we need to ensure that our organization really have a diversified strategy, as I've mentioned. There's enough funding, not only on the short term, but also on the medium term and on the long term. So I have said that we need to really target donors. So you can look at the USAID or other donors, if there are foundations there, you can write your proposals for that, but you can also fundraise from the locality, the corporate social responsibility funds, and your crowdfunding and all that. But most importantly, we should ensure that there is money that we set aside. And if you can, have a restricted endowment fund, which will have its principal held in perpetuity, and you can funds or the earnings from the interest, because that money, if it's there, you will know for the rest of the organization's life, you are able to just draw from the interest while the principal is there, and your organization will never really run out of funds. That will be my final
Thank you. Gary, 2 minutes, please. And as you do your 2 minutes, there's a particular question to you relating to the right time to have a face-to-face meeting with donors or potential donors, or how will that be possible?
So, Dr. Nicholas, I'm assuming that gets to more than 2 minutes. If I answer the first question as you have so well kept us in line. But yeah, so I always say to people, try and get in, find out who the contact person is, and meet with them as soon as you can, right? Because that enables you to build a relationship, enables you to gain feedback, honest feedback, and also allows you to challenge your assumptions about your approach, which may have to be tweaked. Because again, we're talking to a young generation of enthusiastic leaders, right, who may have only 90% of the product, but with feedback, they can fine-tune and present something that will be funded. So I always tell people, get in front of your target early. Philanthropy is also about do your job, do your research. So I mentioned individual giving. The 3 forms of philanthropy people should recognize, each of which have a different approach. There's individual giving, which is highly personal. Corporate philanthropy, which is transactional. And foundation philanthropy, which is driven by a higher public purpose. Each of those three lanes require a different kind of approach. Some organizations are stronger and are more structured around individual giving, and therefore will be negligent or will not have the tools to compete for corporate or foundation funding. Rarely do you find an organization that combines individual giving, foundation philanthropy, and corporate giving as equal development revenue tools. It's rare. It's usually one of those three. You have to determine which of those lanes you fall within. Strengthen your organization in lanes where you are deficient. So that's my response to the first question, Dr. Ozar. Let me offer this conclusion.
In a minute, please.
I will do my best. I think the future of the continent resides in our leaders of tomorrow. And that future is now. And that future is you, the YALI network. Embrace it. 2, as you lead, do remember this. Always do what is right, even if it's the hardest thing to do. Don't take shortcuts. Do what is right, even if it's the hardest thing to do. Remind your community, the community that you serve. And this is a quote I took from Stacey Abrams recently, so I credit her for this quote. Remind the community that you serve that because you have nothing, it doesn't mean that you do nothing. Because you have doesn't mean that you do nothing. And finally, I remind you all to help your community visualize and see a future that they haven't seen. And let that inform your purpose. Let that inform your drive. And let that inform your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that if there was time, we could have gone on and on and on. And I want our participants from wherever you are to please give a virtual clap, a virtual clap to our speakers for a very wonderful presentation and insights that they have offered to us. Can we give a virtual clap, please? Thank you very much to Mr. Gary, Ms. Twala, and Mr. Pape for the presentations. I would not want to summarize again because we have just 1 minute left. But my take home is that generally fundraising is not a small business. And for you to find funds from somebody who is not owing you, for you to get money from somebody who is not owing you, you have to do extraordinary things to convince that person. I'm not saying you should go and do juju. I'm saying you should do the right thing. According to Gary, you should do the right thing. You must do the right thing at all costs. And those right things means the financial responsibility, the accountability, the responsibility, the objectivity, making sure that you are solving a community problem based on felt needs, and that you are able to convince your donor by having maybe opportunity to speak with the person, establish a relationship, because people fund people if they owe them or if they know them. So this is my take home. Remember, if you're able to know someone who gives money, like now I know Pape, I can, after this speech, I'll write Pape a separate mail and then ask him, I have known you. Therefore, handhold me to this fund. Handhold me. I'm telling you, that is how it works. I have gone to a donor one day and said, I will resign if you don't help me. You see? So those are the kind of things, and then he helped me. Those are the kind of things we need to do, because people fund people either because they owe them or they know them. So at this point, I want to thank all our presenters, all our participants.
Well done. Well done.
For their presentations and for listening in. And I want to thank especially the Southern Voices Network program, which is hosted at the Wilson Center Africa program, for making it possible for me to even come to moderate this session. So I thank Dr. Monday and her team for that opportunity to be here. Thank you very much. And at this point, I would want us to put to close and maybe join other sessions that are still ongoing. Not forgetting that we have just known ourselves. I will not let you go unless you bless me. Thank you very much. At this point, those working background can now switch us off and stop the broadcast after we have given a wave to ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Very much.